Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest, reacting to a weird report, I don't even know what to call this, but Alex Kennedy of the NBA, he's come out and said that he was talking to a Western Conference executive, and they brought up how Toronto makes a lot of sense for DeMar DeRozan as a landing spot. People around the league, people that keep up with all the NBA news knows that DeMar DeRozan has been brought up in trade discussions for the past couple weeks now, and apparently this Western Conference executive thinks Toronto is a perfect landing spot. He goes out to say that as far as what Toronto would have to give up, it would probably be a first-round pick plus Serge Ibaka or Marc Gasol. Riker, DeMar DeRozan, before we get into anything, is a Toronto Raptors legend. Obviously was traded out to bring in Kawhi Leonard, who inevitably brought us a championship. And with all the respect and history this man has had and dragging us from the dirt and all that, what are your just thoughts on this speculation, I guess I want to say, from an executive? It doesn't seem like a report that Toronto's actually going after him or the Spurs, they've had talks or anything, but what are your impressions on this sort of thing that's going around Raptors news?
My thoughts are no, no. That's my thoughts. But Ben, let me put this out to you: this report says it's a perfect landing spot. It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense for who? Only the San Antonio Spurs, because they're desperate to get rid of him or LaMarcus Aldridge at some point this season, undoubtedly. I mean, we're talking about this. Greg Popovich, since he started coaching, has made the playoffs since 1997 or 1998. Right? This is the first season now that he's like a sub-500 team. It's looking really grim for the San Antonio Spurs that are basically a legacy franchise in the NBA, and it's because when LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan are out on the court together, they're inefficient. It's a very inefficient duo, and it's just because they're both mid-range guys, and that's just not the style of NBA anymore. And I'm gonna give the relationship to, or the likeliness to, DeMar DeRozan and Carmelo Anthony later in this pod, but I think if we just took DeMar DeRozan, even for free right now, and dropped him in on the team, not have to give up any assets, we're putting our team at a disadvantage from what we are right now. And that might shock some people. I'd say most people agree. I don't know. Where do you stand with this, Ben?
Okay, so that's a bold statement right there, and we'll debate that after. But I guess to reel it back in a little bit, the thing that this executive brought up is a first-round pick and Serge Ibaka. Before we dive into this any bit further, is there any chance that Masai Ujiri gives up a first-round pick and an asset such as Marc Gasol or Serge Ibaka in a possible deal for DeMar DeRozan, or is that are we writing that completely off?
I hope we're writing it completely off. We're not giving away any first picks. I'd say Serge Ibaka could be a tradable piece now that we have a lot of revitalization exactly from the bench, but it's not going to be in a deal with DeMar DeRozan. That you can be absolutely certain you can take that to the bank.
Yeah, and a first-round pick. So. For the people, we've had a couple comments. A lot of people have been talking about this speculation, but we're of the firm stance that we don't believe Masai Ujiri is going to trade assets such as that to bring in DeMar DeRozan, despite the history, despite what he brings to the table. As you brought it up, he doesn't really fit the modern NBA, and the reason why the Toronto Raptors have succeeded so much is because all of our players can knock down threes and play defense. Every single one. I don't think there's a player, except for with the exception of Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, who just makes up for it with his remarkable defense and hustle and rebounding. Everyone on the roster can knock down threes and play defense. It's why we're so successful. And unfortunately, DeMar DeRozan, with all of his scoring intangibles and his ability to get buckets, he can't shoot threes and he can't defend. So it would be a tough situation for us to bring him in and assert him in a lineup over a guy like Fred VanVleet, or if you want to move Fred to the point guard and Lowry to the bench. I don't see him starting on this roster. But you brought up a point. You brought up an interesting point there, that you wouldn't want DeMar DeRozan back for nothing. You wouldn't want to bring him in if we could get him for free, or we could send something, a much less valuable package to the Spurs. Because let's just say this. Let's say the Spurs get to a point where no one in the league wants to, even though DeMar is super talented, and someone's probably going to trade for DeMar just because of the numbers he puts up. He's still putting up a solid stat line this season: 22 points, 4 assists, 5 rebounds. No 0% from the 3-point line. Even he showed an upward trajectory in 3-point shooting when he was at the Raptors, but as soon as he went to the Spurs, it completely fell off a cliff. I think there will be a team that will give some assets out there, but let's say in a hypothetical scenario, Riker, we could trade a second-round pick, not worrying about cap situation. We could throw out a second-round pick for DeMar DeRozan.
No, our second-round picks are invaluable, Ben. They're invaluable because we're getting gems from
nothing for DeMar. If we
players.
could pick him up.
No, see, it would harm the team. It would significantly harm the team because you're not going to give him a starting position role. You already talked about fit, and this is what I'm saying is that our bench is uniquely crafted to provide a spark in games. And we might have talked about this last podcast where you bring in a bench with the intention that if there's a lull in the starting lineup, right? Or if there's a bit of a scoring drought, then the bench doesn't necessarily need to come in to score. They just need to come in high energy, right? Just to bring the pace of the game up. And then it's just a big plus that we also happen to have a fantastic bench of misfits and nobodies that are now absolute dynamos in the league. But if you bring a guy like DeMar DeRozan back into this lineup, he's gonna demand the ball, or I mean, you can't deny him the ball. He's made himself a wonderful career in the NBA thus far, but he's gonna bring it to the post. He's gonna slow down the offense. He's taking away from the motion, from quick passes, and just that style of basketball is not conducive with what the Raptors play right now. And you might say, oh, but Ryker, his assist numbers were up as high as they've ever been in his entire career the last season that he was on the Toronto Raptors before he got dealt away for Kawhi Leonard. And I'd say, fine. But if you look at the difference between having a DeMar DeRozan team for the past 6-7 years before he got traded to what the difference of 2 seasons makes having Kawhi Leonard and then no superstar player on the team and how much better we've become, it makes no sense to me why we would bring a guy like that. And that's not a knock against DeMar being a skilled player. It just doesn't work for what fundamentally makes the Raptors good right now.
But we were still good with DeMar DeRozan. We still had such a
first round
success with Toronto
you can
Raptors.
call regular season good all you want, but first round and second round exits are not good.
We made it to the Eastern Conference Finals.
And then we got dummied. We got smacked.
We made it to 6 games. I will not let anyone strip away that 2016 series away from me, Ryker. But to combat some of your points, because I see where you're coming from. And, this is hypothetical for a trade, but it might be a reality or something to look at in the offseason when DeMar DeRozan's a free agent, because this might be an actual scenario that could pull through or whatever. But DeMar DeRozan off the bench of the Toronto Raptors, or I think that would be a perfect fit for him in his current day. If you look at him versus a guy like Lou Williams, who's a bucket, who in similar vein doesn't play much defense, even though DeMar is a much better defender than Lou Williams, and that's, Lou's at the bottom tier in the league in defense. DeMar DeRozan coming off our bench, that would be such a spark, Ryker. He'd come in. We know what this man can do. He can come in, automatically get you points from the mid-range, the paint. He could throw down a couple wild dunks. And I'm kind of shocked. I'm kind of bewildered by the fact you'd say you wouldn't want him on the roster for nothing. Because, yes, we're so talented right now because we have these pieces that all fit together greatly and all that sort of stuff. And we're not losing Siakam. We're not losing Lowry. We're not losing Fred by implementing DeMar back. We're just adding another 20 points per game off our bench. And, yes, I love guys like Norman Powell and even TD right now. But if you can have that surefire efficient scoring, whether it be from the mid-range, which is a bit different than the current style of play that we play, Nick Nurse could certainly integrate that offensive juggernaut of DeMar DeRozan into this roster.
A team that's above 500 right now, if you can name to me a playoff team that runs an offense through a post-up guy right now, and I'm not talking about a Siakam post-up where he uses his backing down in order to do quick drop steps or good spin moves, or that's not the majority of his game. I'm talking about a guy that the primary offense is run through a post-up player. That
like a ball stopper. Not because I don't think DeMar DeRozan's a post-up player. I think he's a ball stopper because he's in that mid-post, mid-semi-post.
I would say the majority of his shots come off post fades.
Yeah, that's like semi-post because he's not like an Andre Drummond or something.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And how many teams in the playoffs right now have that type of offense? Zero. None of the top
many.
teams.
But
none of the top
teams.
I'm not saying. And there's a reason.
We're bringing them off the bench.
There's a very clear reason why the San Antonio Spurs are at the bottom of their conference right now. And it's because they don't have one. They have 2 guys that have that same offense. They have 2 guys that are ball stoppers, that are mid-range post guys. It's not conducive to today's NBA. I wouldn't even have him if he asked to come and play for the Toronto Raptors for free. And it's the same argument why nobody wanted to take back Carmelo Anthony, because you can't argue that he's a bad player. You can just argue that he's not worth it in the NBA right now. He just doesn't work for a winning team.
But he's playing well for Portland right now.
He had a few good games, but Portland still sucks.
It's too small of a sample size
to
1-4
with
that right now. So we'll leave the Melo discussion out of it for now. We might revisit this in 3 weeks because we all know how big of a fan of Carmelo Anthony.
Yes.
But anyways, I'm not arguing at all that we should start featuring DeMar, bring him back in and feature him as the number one offense, and treat it like it's Kobe Bryant in 2005 when the league and Joe Johnson, those types of players, when they played like that. I'm saying if we could bring that sort of asset off the bench, just as when the offense is stagnated, that we have a guy that can certainly get you a bucket when you need it, certainly more consistently than a player like Norman Powell. That would be such an asset for this team if we needed someone to, close a few games at the end of it, and Siakam's not going super strong, because I brought up the fact Pascal Siakam, to transition to a superstar, needs to be able to get you a bucket at the end of games. Well, having enough supporting cast that can get you some scores, and that will help facilitate that development for Siakam and these sorts of players. And DeMar DeRozan has shown he's willing to let the younger guys grow. His assist totals and all that amped up when, that bench mob season, his last season in Toronto. And yes, it kind of stagnated in the playoffs, but that's a whole nother discussion. But if we're talking about DeMar DeRozan to play like a Lou Williams role, come in, be a designated scorer, do what he does best, and then not have
a designated scorer like Lou Williams, because Lou Williams, the offense flows through Lou Williams. The offense stops at DeMar DeRozan. He gets his points from holding the ball in the mid-range post, and he does fadeaways. And that style, just you can't have him out at the end of a game if you're looking for a guy that can score, that can finish. Because he's at the he's at the shooting guard position. That means he can be guarded anywhere from a 1, 2, or a 3. He can be guarded undersized 1 or an oversized 1 or an undersized 3. That's the best defensive positions in the NBA. And you need a spacer, because you're going to have way better mismatches on Siakam taking that last shot, because he's going to be guarded against the 4s and the 5s, which none have proven to be quick enough to guard him yet. So you're not able to have DeMar DeRozan be out there to space the court for Siakam to take the last-minute shot. That means DeMar's going to have to take the last-minute shot. And we know he can't do that. I'd rather have Kyle take the last-minute shot than DeMar.
But to have him on the court, this is what I'm saying, okay? And your points hold if we're running the offense. DeMar is our number one option again. But are you saying that DeMar DeRozan couldn't play a Lou Williams-type role? Because I'd argue that DeMar DeRozan is a much better player than Lou Williams.
Is going to be content. Well, we're talking hypotheticals. But are you telling me that DeMar DeRozan, career starter and all-star, averaging 22 points per game, is 1, going to be content to come off the bench, and 2, going to be content to be the third option off the bench?
I'm saying in this hypothetical scenario where the rest of the league passes up on this man, because that's the only way we possibly get him, and then the nostalgia of playing in Toronto. In this world where we could possibly get DeMar DeRozan, it's probably a weird hypothetical discussion anyways, but are you telling me he couldn't play that Lou Williams role? Because I'd argue DeMar DeRozan is a better player than Lou Williams right now.
I'd argue he's
not.
Is that
a fair point?
I would say that Lou Williams, if you pull up the stats right now, I'd say Lou Williams is having a better season statistically than DeMar DeRozan. And I'm going to cross-reference, so you keep talking and I'll search it up.
Yeah, I don't have Lou Williams stats in front of me, so you'll search that. But I'm saying if DeMar DeRozan was asked to do the things that Lou Williams were to do, aside from the three-point shooting, he'd be able to do it all at a higher level, including the defensive side of the ball. Because he can slash, he can get those mid-range jumpers, and to run it within a proper Nick Nurse flowing offense and maybe get his three-point shot going like it was in his last year in Toronto, I think he could be such an asset for this Toronto Raptors team, assuming he's used right, assuming he's used to the his offensive potential. He's certainly a more talented, more effective, more skilled player than Lou Williams. And Lou is in a perfect situation for him with the LA Clippers right now, but I think it's kind of wild to think that to have DeMar DeRozan off our bench for free, to have him, on maybe a cheap contract this offseason, just saying the rest of the league gave up on him, I think he'd be a plus for this roster.
Lou Williams shooting 38% from 3, 32 minutes, 2 less minutes than DeMar DeRozan, averaging slightly more points than him and 2 more assists than him.
Yeah, right now, and Lou's in the perfect situation in his career, and I'm saying that DeMar could do Lou Williams' role better than Lou Williams if he was asked.
Not a dang chance. You swap out right now DeMar DeRozan onto the Clippers, and you're telling me that he's going to fill that same role. Not a chance.
I think they're
not
better.
a chance.
They're better yeah.
Not even. You're joking.
Well, I think people are underestimating how good this man's is, despite the fact, because he's on the Spurs, because he's not in an offense right now that really fits his game. But let us know what you guys think. This is obviously a hypothetical debate. We kind of transitioned from the early report pretty early in this podcast because neither of us are of the belief we should give up assets to bring in DeMar DeRozan. But, do you guys think that if we could get DeMar DeRozan at a cheap, free contract, essentially, that we'd be in a positive position for the Toronto. So let us know in the comment section below. You're the best to make his far. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all that cool stuff. Riker, any last words?
That's it for me, Ben. Cheers.